Okay. It looks like it's working. Hi. This is my talk on cultivating playful culture, presented by me. So who am I? I'm a game designer, or more specifically, I'm a level designer at SMG Studio in Sydney. My name is Duncan Corrigan. I love playful and expressive games, and it's my personal goal as a designer to cultivate playful culture through my games and other creative endeavors. So what is playful culture? Why is it beneficial? And how do we cultivate it? These are going to be the questions that I'm looking to answer today. Just a brief overview. I'm first going to start looking at our current culture, how playfulness is perceived and why it is perceived that way, how it affects us and our personal values, and how it influences games and gaming culture. Then looking at what it means to be playful, how we inspire playfulness in others, and how we might try to inspire playfulness with our games. Lastly, looking at what a culture that promotes and celebrates playfulness would look like. Okay, starting. Unplayful culture. This is a society that undervalues play. Our society values performance, efficiency, and productivity above most things. It celebrates things being done quickly and in the best way possible. Society rewards hard work. It makes sense to us that we would hand out awards for academic achievement, or we celebrate hard work, but we rarely celebrate someone for enjoying themselves or for looking after themselves. So play is discouraged because it isn't performant, it's not efficient or straight to the point, it doesn't aim to be the most effective, it's kind of a waste of time, it's silly, it's not serious. And things like leisure and your discretionary time, this is all seen as kind of indulgent or unnecessary, or at the very least it should be limited as it's not productive. And so where does this kind of culture come from? Well, capitalism, basically. So we live in a society based around economic growth. So things that make money are perceived as more valuable. And then the opposite is true. Things that don't contribute to making money are less valuable. We determine the value of something by how it relates to economic growth. So education or a job are perceived as valuable things because they lead to economic growth in a very direct way. Games and art are perceived as less valuable as they aren't as productive. They don't make money. There's also insecurity. So people are anxious to engage in things that aren't considered serious or meaningful. People don't want to appear childish or silly because these are perceived as undesirable traits. There's also this idea of algorithmic and heuristic work. So algorithmic work is formulaic. It requires attention to detail and the ability to follow orders and stay status quo. Heuristic work, on the other hand, requires new thinking, creative ideas, self-direction and motivation. And for a long time, the kind of work that was in demand was algorithmic work. So our education systems were designed to train us for algorithmic work. And playfulness impedes algorithmic work. It's not a trait that is encouraged or practiced in schools because it's not useful for this kind of work. However, in modern day, we have a lot of problems that now demand creative thinkers and leaders, so people who are more equipped for heuristic work. So this culture becomes internalized and can influence our values. We kind of automatically accept that work is more important than play, that studying is more valuable than goofing off. This can kind of cause conflict within ourselves, where we can often feel anxious. For example, we may feel guilty for slacking off at work or not staying back late. We can feel guilty for taking time to look after ourselves or to enjoy ourselves, or at least we try to limit the time that we do because it's not as important as work. Often our own mental health is overlooked in favor of being more performant, efficient, or productive. This is most obvious in work culture, where overworking is often applauded as a noble thing, and people often feel they need to work harder or longer hours to feel valuable. I really don't like working. That's what I look like when I work. So games and culture. So how does this internalized culture influence games and consumer culture? I think it's interesting that it's widely expected that games should have a kind of objective or a way to win. I suppose it makes sense because goals are a non-vague and tangible indicator of progress, which would be a suitable incentive for a culture that values performance and productivity. A challenge that takes practice and effort to overcome feels more valuable, feels more worthwhile. If you can't progress, if you can't win, it's a less meaningful activity. It's not performant or productive. Often games feel as though they are designed as if progressing is the most important thing, rather than progress being a natural consequence of playful engagement. Games will often incentivize and reward higher skill play or player dedication with achievement systems and other such rewards. These can alter the perceived value of certain interactions as they afford that tangible progress. Games are often considered by many as low culture, as unproductive and childish. Games are not a valuable use of time in a society interested in economic growth. Even within the community of people who play games, certain games are seen as lesser. Games that are meandering and toy-like, that can't be beaten or have no serious tones with mature narrative themes. And there's sort of an insecurity generated by this conflict of having a hobby that is perceived as a waste of time by our society. And I think over time, gaming culture and games industry's collective attempt to justify this hobby has led to homogenization. It has led to games that try to fall in line with our current culture's values, but this mostly applies to mainstream games. Lastly, we can also see this influence on the perceived value of games within consumer culture, like how much people are willing to spend on a game, or specifically how little. Games with large maps that tout hundreds of hours of things to do, that have high fidelity graphics. These are seen as more valuable because by strict measurement, these things are bigger and have more in them. Thus, they are more valuable. They're better value for your dollar. So, this is my definition. Being playful is making the most of a situation with volition and autonomy. So this is acting free of any kind of extrinsic motivation. You are simply driven by an autonomous urge to make the most of a situation, to find new ideas and opportunities and explore new perspectives. I think this is a natural human trait. I mean, if you look at children, they love to play and they're often they're not very anxious about it and often have unprompted enthusiasm to engage playfully. So playfulness, where do we play? It's not limited to games. Not everybody likes games. And also some people don't necessarily play games as a way to engage playfully. There are other reasons to play games, such as to relax or to de-stress, which are perfectly fine things. But in terms of finding what you enjoy doing as a form of play is important. Volition is part of the definition, is an important part of the definition, because it's about what you enjoy. These are discretionary activities that you're engaged with because you like them, because you want to do them. And you can be playful in all aspects of your life. So it's not just games are often things that we play, but you can be playful at work, you can be playful in conversation. So for example, a playful conversation is not about just conveying information, but you're trying to make each other laugh, or you're trying to sort of explore this space of conversation. So what does playful engagement look like? These are some, I think, good examples. So roleplay. Role-playing is interesting because it's not about making the best decision. You're kind of trying to empathize with another point of view and make actions based on this new perspective. It's more expressive and introspective and not driven by a rigid rigid set of values or goals. Improv is also a good example. No strict objective. It's sort of directionless, and the only output is what you put into it. Really, the only reason to engage with improv is out of the joy of making a scene the best that it can be. So I find this extremely playful. It's also very scary for people, which is interesting. Dance as well has no particular agenda and has no rules to follow. It's very expressive, and you move your body in ways that feel satisfying and fun. Also, just because some people often think that play is a thing that is rebellious, play is not actually about breaking the rules. Rebellion is, in actual fact, another form of conformity, because your actions are based on rules. That is, you strictly do the opposite of what you're told, where playful engagement is often informed by rules, but not driven by them. Here's some games that I think are playful. So Wonder Song. In this game, you have the ability to sing and dance at any point, including cutscenes. You have this ability to playfully inject your own tone into a scene or roleplay this bard that is really, really happy. Untitled Goose Game. This scene in particular, I really love. It kind of inspires you to do this thing. You want to roleplay as a jerk goose and ruin somebody's lunch, but it doesn't really, there's nobody who is going to come and get the sandwich later. And so this all comes from within, which I find really, really great. Kirby is also a very interesting example. If anybody is familiar, in the Kirby games you can just fly completely over the entire stage and never interact with any enemies or pitfalls. But most people don't do that. Most people try to make the most of it. They interact with the enemies, and they do different things. Also, Grace Brooks presents The Haunted Island, a frog detective game. This very cute magnifying glass. It doesn't really have any use. You can't really detect anything, but I think it's a really funny, silly way to roleplay as the detective. So, what are the benefits of playfulness? Of course, I'll be disclosing this in rap form. Not really. So, playfulness promotes creativity and open-mindedness, as its interest is exploring the boundaries of an experience to make the most of it, to see something from a range of perspectives and learn new things or gain new insight. People tend to be more compassionate and empathetic because they are used to engaging thoughtfully with a problem rather than relying on efficient or performance solutions. It also cultivates autonomous learners who are engaged in their own learning and growth. These people are also self-directed and confident. So I think that sounds pretty good. So, how do we inspire playfulness in others? So I'm going to answer this by looking at what inspires me. So, friends. Friends is huge. Friends give me the love and acceptance, to give me the courage and energy to be playful. Things that are surprising and charming, novel. A good improv partner is great inspiration. Mystery. I'm going to leave that one mysterious. Self-expression, the opportunity to express myself. I'd also like to take this moment to give a shout out to all my friends who encourage and inspire me to be my best every day. I love you all dearly. Thank you so much. Also a shout out to my cat. She's the queen of my heart. Okay, so inspiring playfulness through game design. Looking at what inspires me to be playful, can we design a game that achieves all these things? Can a game be your friend? Can a game be surprising and charming? Can a game give you opportunities to express yourself? So starting with games as friends. If we wanted to design a game that we responded to like a friend, how would we do that? And I thought about this for a long time. And I concluded that dogs are humans' best friend, right? And puppies are super playful. So if games were just more like puppies, what would that look like? Or if you prefer cats, maybe something like this. Okay, real talk. So just like a friend, a game can be supportive and loving. Being in support of your integrity and building trust by being consistent and honest with its systems and spaces. It's about trusting a game to not discourage or punish your approach to a particular situation or problem. Also trusting that rules are consistent and spaces are honest. That when you try to do something that you think will work, it does. When this trust is established, players feel empowered to express themselves and engage more deeply. The game should also be engaged with you. It gives you the sense that it is aware of you and the different ways that you'd want to express yourself. It feels more like a relationship because it responds to your actions and it anticipates how you might respond to it. It also doesn't have expectations of you. I think we should approach game design with the mentality that progress is not the point, that getting the player from point A to point B is not strictly important, but instead a likely consequence of playful engagement. I think this mentality puts a larger focus on the moment-to-moment engagement. I think games as friends should also be personable and likable. Characters that inspire emotion and role play. Mario is a great example. Mario inspires positivity and a can-do attitude that inspires you to role play this kind of energetic character. I have a note here that just says wahoo. And another note here that just says wahi. Okay. So surprising and charming games. So for a game to be surprising and charming, it should have novelty. It should be cute, charming, funny, cool, mysterious, stylish, whatever it is, whatever incites emotions and make you enthusiastic. For me personally, I obviously lean to more cute things, but it's really whatever excites you. I think of novelty as a good improv partner. So with a bad partner, getting bad prompts, it becomes difficult. Bad prompts are stale and are hard to play off of, in the same way that you're unlikely to respond playfully to something predictable and bland. Something that is novel and surprising is constantly offering great prompts and fresh inspiration that is easy to play off and invites and inspires that kind of playful engagement. So self-expression in games. Offer the player a stage, a space where they can express themselves. When empowered to express, this often leads to unique self-expression. This talk is a good example of that. Offer tools so the player may express themselves. This can be something super simple. As an example, in Shovel Knight, the game Shovel Knight, you have a crouch button which makes you duck one pixel. So it doesn't really have any use, but it gives opportunities for people to engage playfully. And you'll find that people will bob up and down to the music, or if they're waiting for a platform, they'll bob up and down to express that they are impatient. So more opportunities to be playful also lead to more opportunities to realize you are being playful. And it is extremely powerful to see your own playful engagement manifest, to see your unique brand of expression, and games afford this opportunity of introspection and reflection, to reflect on how and why you did a thing. And for me personally, this is how I became aware of when I was being playful and how that changed my attitude and approach to things. All right, just a recap. I can't see there. Build trust and relationships with the player. Treat progress like consequence of playful engagement. Likeable characters that inspire roleplay or emotion. I don't know why that had a question mark. Good improv partner with charming and novel prompts. Provide a stage and tools for self-expression. Design moments for introspection. Audience participation time. All right. So I would like, with somebody who is sitting near you or next to you, I want you to spend the next 20 seconds or so to come up with a secret wave or handshake. Anything that you come up with together, just have a conversation and work out a secret handshake. Go for it. sorry to interrupt. George, Red Gyarados. All right, so thank you so much for doing that. So what I would like is whenever you maybe bump into this person that you did this secret handshake with, during your time at Freeplay, you can share this secret wave, and I hope that's a fun and nice moment for you, between the two of you. Anybody who couldn't partner up, didn't have anybody sitting next to them, I do have a wave prepared. Okay, so this is our wave. Wah, wah. All right, so if you see me around, please share that secret, not so secret wave with me. I will be really excited. Okay, cool, moving on. So, practicing and celebrating playfulness cultivates playful culture. This is why it's beneficial to provide inspiration and spaces for people to be playful, like playful games or playful spaces like Freeplay. Question our internalized culture and values. If you feel guilty or anxious about something, question why. Celebrate your playful side. Celebrate the playfulness in those around you. Inspire and encourage your friends or the culture around you to be more playful. You can apply playful thinking in more spaces, like at your work or in schooling. So practice makes perfect. The more we practice being playful, the easier it is. And that's why creating spaces for people to be playful is so beneficial. The more that we practice it, the easier it becomes, and it becomes more of a default response that requires less of a prompt. So playful culture means playful people, autonomous learners who are open-minded and compassionate, confident and creative. It means more playful spaces, like Freeplay, that cultivate creativity, positivity, inclusivity, and collaboration. And it also means more playful society, which is less judgmental and less anxious. Thank you all.
Any questions? Yep.
There was a conversation online last year and this year about deceptive game mechanics. So things like where the last little inch of your health bar was actually much longer than you thought it was to be more dramatic. How does that sit though with your idea that games should be very honest, which seems to be in conflict?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think in that case, maybe it would be forgiven or unnoticed. I think if it's very obvious, then that becomes a problem. So this is about like building a sense of trust that the player can feel like they can try something and expect for it to work. And often in those cases of high intensity, it's actually that they expect to be able to survive. And so it's almost more honest, or at least it sort of builds that trust that like how you think things should result ends up being the case. Yeah. Thanks for the question.
Another question over there.
Hello.
What numbers are it on when we reach that?
Hello. Oh, there we go. Thank you for the talk. Improvising represent. I actually have a question regarding improvisation. How do I word it though? How do you learn differentiating when you feel like the idea you have for a reaction or a playfulness is boring and when it's actually boring. If you understand what I mean, because just as a little bit of a tiny explanation, I often get paralyzed thinking that what I'm contributing in a situation, in a playful situation, is boring to everybody else, or maybe I am trying to dilute it so that it seems more playful. I don't know how to explain it, but how do you differentiate that?
So I think this sort of feeds into this idea of like our current culture. We have this idea of being very like performant. So worrying about whether or not something is good enough is almost the antithesis of a playful approach. In reality, when you're being playful, you don't have to worry about being competent. You don't have to worry about doing something well. You're doing it because it feels good, and you're doing it because you want to. So I think in those cases, it's more about doing what feels right. And yeah, it can be difficult to obviously feel a level of confidence to kind of be playful. Like playfulness is difficult and it's scary. Yeah.
Question there?
I was thinking about how, like, you've been talking a lot about, making games, playful, inciting, the audience, the player to be more playful. And it's like, what do you make of, those games that are, not serious, but, people just kind of make their own rules in there and, just have fun when it's not even programmed. A few years ago, I was, playing Half-Life 2, and, you know how there's, cars in the middle of the road and stuff? I just kind of bounced them around with my gravity gun and just parked them properly. And this sort of stuff was really fun for me, and I was just it was just me, and I was just doing that. Or how in Fortnite kids just hang out, and it's not even it's playful within the playful medium, and what do you make of that? What does it mean to make a game playful when it already exists innately in a player's subconscious, or even just what they do? How do you insert that? Why would you that, all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So the stuff that you're referring to, that more emergent play. So yeah, if you're a playful person, or if you're engaging with something playfully, it doesn't need to be playful. In fact, nothing is inherently playful. And so you might be playing the most unplayful game and still engaging with it in a playful manner, because that's definitely something that you bring to the table. So this idea of designing games to inspire playfulness, it's not that these games are playful or inherently playful. It's more about inspiring people who have a harder time being playful. And I think the more you practice being playful, the easier it is to be playful elsewhere. So for the people that haven't had much opportunity to practice, these games are just kind of being that olive branch, or reaching out and being here's a safe space to be playful, to try things and to inspire them.
Yeah, cool, thanks. That's really cool, thanks.
We have time for one more question. Down the back.
Did you see that?
What happened? Subliminal messages.
Science.
Yeah. I have a question about, I guess, the conflation of the formal qualities of play and the aesthetics of play. You have mentioned, I guess, games as personal friends or support or charming. Is there a flip side to that? Can you have playfulness that is not friendly or not kind? It's hard-edged or dark.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of aesthetics, yeah, you can have whatever it is, because it is about volition. If a particular aesthetic appeals to you, if you like dark energy, and that appeals to you, then that is something that you're wanting to engage with in a playful way. So the idea of making something charming is to present something with a very strong sense of style, that can appeal to somebody and can inspire sort of interest and enthusiasm just at an aesthetic level. But of course, yeah, it doesn't have to be cute, it doesn't have to be silly. That just so happens to be my sort of aesthetic, but absolutely. And in fact, because playfulness it's internal and external, so you can have something that is completely narrative-based or like a narrative game that you can engage with playfully because of how you're sort of interpreting the themes and the narrative of it.
Okay, that's all the time we have.
Thank you so much.